All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in. Have a really special, interesting discussion and video that we're hoping is going to be very helpful for a lot of people. I have two very awesome special guests who are giving their time and their knowledge right now on some very important and powerful topics. Okay, so I'd like to introduce, if you've seen a past video that I've had the pleasure of doing with Dr. Paula Kramer, then you know that Dr. Paula Kramer is an author and an educator and a professor and is responsible for a lot of very interesting community opportunities and setting up a lot of different things. Paula also has authored Frames of Reference for Pediatric Occupational Therapy, which is now on its 4th edition, and it's now available. And she is also Professor Emerita at U Sciences. So I'd like to first welcome, a warm welcome to Dr. Paula Kramer.
Hello, everybody.
Also joining us, we have also another gentleman who's an educator, a lifelong educator, who's also been involved in a lot of different projects and doing different things. He's actually raising his own child, his own son with autism for over 20 years. So he's an expert on the topic of children with autism and needs. He's also founder of Respire Autism Services, which is a non-profit organization that's aimed to help assisting families that are raising children with autism and different needs. All right, so without further ado, I'd also like to welcome another special guest, Sam, Mr. Sam.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted me to mention your last name.
Oh, absolutely, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sam Hendrickson, I'm honored to join you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you both for being here. So we also are going to be just kind of discussing different topics that are very important right now. And I have two experts here who are just going to be able to shed some light on some very important questions and hopefully provide some nice ideas and strategies for everyone who's watching at home to help out in the current times that we're experiencing. So the first question, we can jump right into it, has to do with going out into the community. And not just going out into the community, but they're talking a lot about the need of masks, the need of gloves, the need of certain protective equipment. Going out into the community, if we have, children with special needs or certain needs, sometimes children with autism have, sensitivities to their senses. So maybe a big question, a big concern is, will children be able to tolerate wearing a mask or wearing gloves? How parents and families want to know, how do we go about doing this? What are some strategies? What are some ideas? So I wanted to bring that up as our first question for us to discuss. So,
Do you want to take it? Start?
Absolutely. Thank you, Paula. Well, from an autism perspective, and I think for everyone, there's a range of disability. And, parents know their children best to know what they might be able to tolerate and endure. I would begin by answering that question that, knowing my son with autism and many of the children I know who have autism in the way that my son does, being sick is a precursor for adverse behaviors. Just because the feeling of being sick, be it a temperature, body aches, often causes adverse behaviors. So one goal is to prevent them from being sick in the first place and following the guidelines and just staying in. However, if your family circumstances are at such a place where you have no other choice but to take them out in public, then I think the next best thing is to really be thoughtful about it. Wearing a mask can be a source of discomfort. They can have just aversions to it. And because of that, you'd need to kind of approach that with a plan in mind. I would use the metaphor of almost like a marathon, where it might be a little bit more extreme to think of it that way, but if you're going to run a marathon, you need to train for it. You need to learn how to endure it. You just can't leave your house and put running shoes on and go. And I think that's the approach, certainly with the autistic children, that you need to develop a system or a plan. Quite often that's a plan that can be developed by a behaviorist or a psychologist. A BCBA would be ideal if you have access. Many people that are in public schools still have access to their child study teams. But to develop a plan where you desensitize the child to the wearing of the mask and you work up to a certain duration. And that's a plan that often involves a folding in of exposing them to the mask. It's not just putting it on, it's allowing them to look at it and play with it, then get it on their face, and then just trial and error kinds of things, a typical desensitizing plan. That's really the equivalent of the training for the marathon, getting them to be used to the idea of wearing a mask, and that so that when they're ready to go out and you have to go out, they have a sense of that. And depending on the developmental level of the child, that can take anywhere from a week on upwards. Some plans take quite a while. But that would be my advice, to begin to desensitize them to the idea if they are in fact adverse to anything facially happening. That would be my first recommendation. And again, it depends. It's always dependent upon the level and the tolerance level and so forth of your child or the individual with autism or any disability for that matter.
I think the trial and error is critically important. There's no one way for everything. I would also, in addition to moving up to it, building up to the idea of wearing the mask, use things that that they like. They may be tactily defensive, but do they like a particular soft cloth rubbing against them? If they do, try to make a mask out of that soft cloth. If they're into superheroes, try to engage that in helping them make a mask that has superheroes, or buying one that has superheroes. For me, I have asthma. So someone made me a mask out of very heavy cotton. It looks great. It feels miserable on me. I felt my breathing restricted the moment I put it on. And plus that, it didn't come tight around my face, so my glasses fogged up, which wasn't very helpful when I was out walking. So I went online, and I have to admit that there's a million kinds of masks online. It's taking a long time to get them sometimes, and some of them are costing a lot. But I found one that was actually recommended originally for people who rode motorcycles. And I'll show you it because it's kind of funky. It's actually a tube of very soft fabric that you put over your head. And then you pull up around your face. Now it's very soft, it's very flexible, and it doesn't bother my breathing, even though it's very close to my mouth. And it's close to my face, so my glasses don't fog up. So it was trial and error that I found this. Now, my son happens to like skeletons. He's a little bit older, but he still finds them fun. So I found one for him that looks like this. Covers up the bottom of his face looking like a skeleton. He thinks that's funny, which is great. As long as he's willing to wear it, I think it's very cool. So you might kind of explore different things. You might also try to try different things. If they like chocolate or Nutella, maybe you want to put a little bit of Nutella on the inside. A lot of kids with autism like to mouth things and chew them. I don't care if they chew their mask, but if that's the way they're going to keep it on, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. The other thing is spraying a scent that they happen to like. Maybe it's lavender or something like that. Spraying that on the mask, as long as it's not something that will be dangerous right up against their nose. We're just giving a whole lot of suggestions. They're not typical for any one child. So, and I think, think about it. The other thing is maybe you don't want them going out a whole lot at this time. If you can get them to stay inside, maybe that's a better option. I also think you should check with your state and local ordinances about masks. In New York State, I have to admit, I love Governor Cuomo, and I love his briefings, but he was saying that masks for everybody over 2. I cannot imagine a 2 or 3-year-old keeping a mask on. So I was kind of surprised at that. But, and in some states, they're saying things like, if you have a condition that prevents you from wearing a mask, then it's okay. So I think, you know, parents also have to be comfortable with being able to say, look, my son or daughter has this problem and they can't tolerate having the mask on because of that. I can't imagine a parent being given a ticket for something like that, or a parent being given a ticket for having their 3-year-old not wear a mask, you know. But, you know, so check with your local ordinances in terms of what they're allowing and what they're not allowing. But try to find something that your kid likes. You know your kid better than anybody else, better than any professional does as a parent. So work with what your child likes or can tolerate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that trial and error, you know, strategy is just so powerful because it works on what both of you are saying, that, you know, Sam, you're saying that with the kind of desensitizing, kind of like you're preparing for that marathon. So, you know, if you're able to stay inside and you're able to avoid going out in the community, that's excellent. But maybe just introducing that mask, showing that mask, you know, kind of just talking about it, introducing it a little bit to, you know, slowly start building it up, you know, even where it could take a whole week before you're even physically contacting that mask. But that way, just in case of a situation where, you know, a child might need to have that mask on, it's already a little bit easier, you know, as we've been preparing for it a little bit. And, you know, in that trial and error, Paul, I really like how you're saying with trying different scents or different tastes or textures in there. And, you know, I think a big thing too is having our children be a part of it. You know, sometimes maybe a parent might feel like, you know, all the responsibility is on them, but, you know, especially with something like this, I think that's something that could be shared where, you know, you're showing different pictures and seeing what, you know, your child might be interested in to see what can be, you know, meaningful to do. I really like the concept of superheroes. I saw a cool video that I was sharing earlier where the mask, for the gloves, for purposes of the gloves, you can use a Sharpie to decorate the gloves and turn them into superhero hands. So whether it's Hulk hands or Spider-Man hands, so kind of to promote that, you know, we're not wearing gloves to go outside and have gloves on, but, you know, these are becoming our superpower hands. And, you know, maybe even a similar thing with the mask. I know, Sam, you were saying something very, very interesting about different mask options. A really cool idea. I don't want to take credit for it. I could do.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it? That was really interesting what you're saying.
Thank you. You know, yeah, I think it has been one of the themes of all of, you know, the idea of mask wearing and kids with disabilities. You know, hopefully you can avoid being really in a rough spot between, you know, you don't want to have to choose between a behavior and COVID-19. You know, but I get that some people, that might be a reality that they're facing. Frankly, I would choose one behavior over, you know, 14 days of a recovery with the virus, as they're on average saying, because you will get more, you know, typically, I think I'm only speaking from my perspective and some people that I know with autistic children, when they're sick, you do see a rise in aversive behaviors. So having that in mind. But one idea that came to mind was, you know, Halloween, you know, wearing a Halloween costume and sort of modifying the mask so that it's protective. But, you know, the idea of dressing somebody up as a fireman or Darth Vader, and, you know, we're going to have a go at, you know, the local grocery store, and you're just going to be Darth Vader through here, and just making a narrative based on that is not a bad idea. If it works, you know, it's kind of like whatever, if you have to be out and you know you have to wear a mask because you don't want to contract this virus, then, you know, I would say it's a time to be, you know, creative and you're shameless and just do whatever you need to do. Even if that means you dressing up as Luke Skywalker to their Darth Vader, have a go, have fun and do it. The other thing I might mention too is, and it pertains to another question, which I think we'll get to, but the idea it's not really, or in addition to a desensitizing plan, when the goal of that is really to kind of minimize their aversions to the mask, getting them to a point where they can tolerate it for a duration of time, kind of like running a sustained mile for a duration of time. It's important if you are going to undergo that kind of plan. A behaviorist, if they were at school, one of the big questions they'd be asking themselves is, how long can this last? In other words, how much time do I have in the supermarket that I can, what's the duration of their wearing it before they've had enough and it's coming off? So that's that's a place for rewards, whatever it takes. If it's candy, if it's a toy at the end of that grocery shopping trip, I would say, prompt them that you're going to get a reward if you can do this for 30 minutes, and then get the reward the very last thing after the goal's been accomplished. All important things. But to circle back, the idea of a social story helps conceptualize this for the kids. Like, hey, we have to wear a mask, and here's why. So it's not just desensitizing my own aversions to the mask facially. It's also that I'm going to be seeing everybody else in masks. And the idea of seeing some scary masks or some funny masks might seem really unusual. And that could also cause a behavior. I was, as you said, I was an educator. I can remember every Halloween when we had parades at my elementary school, we would have a dozen or so younger kids scared out of their minds and crying because they saw somebody in a scary Halloween costume in an upper grade. So these are unintended consequences of otherwise really nice intentions, but it's something to think about because, you don't want to learn these lessons in the middle of a grocery shopping experience and the mask is coming off and you have a meltdown, that kind of thing. So just things to think about. And there's plenty of social stories online. Lots of organizations are doing them where they're just helping kids conceptualize this whole idea of this new normal for us all. That, hey, you have to wear a mask, so does everybody else. And everybody's going to start to, have their own sort of self-expressions with these masks, if you will. So all things to think about as we enter this new frontier.
Yeah, and I think, Paula, I think even when we were speaking last, you were talking about even a possibility of creating your own social story where you can kind of take your own pictures. And I think there was different websites where you can create your own masks also, like it has the pattern, how to make it at home. And
right. There are lots of patterns, and I happen to like Disney a lot. So I happened to find a website that had the bottom half of the face being a Disney character's face. Sam, I thought about sending a Winnie the Pooh over to you for Liam. He might like that. Yeah, I think that you can look through magazines, pick out pictures, and make your social story from that. Sam introduced me to the idea of social stories, but it's a way of preparing kids for what they're going to do. We talked last time about scheduling, and you can do with pictures a schedule for things. You can include wearing masks and going outside with that. Yep. If you're lucky enough to have a backyard, use that as your outside time. Don't use the supermarket. But if you're a single parent and you can't get a food delivery, and let me tell you, it's really hard in some areas to get one. Cousin of mine put on Facebook this morning, I know things are getting better because I got a delivery from Whole Foods first time I asked for a time. But where my son is right now, it's still hard to get a time for a food delivery. So if you have to go out, you're a single parent or something like that, you got to do the preparation beforehand, because otherwise you're going to go out and have a meltdown. It's going to be really uncomfortable. If you can switch off with another parent, they can watch your kids and you can shop. You can go out and shop for both of them, both families, or the other way around. Try all kinds of things. But I think the idea of having a social story is a wonderful way of telling children and young adults, if they're cognitively impaired, what to expect. And the more they know what to expect, the easier it is to go ahead with the plan. I think that children get upset with uncertainty. And we're all feeling pretty uncertain right now in many ways. So we have to be careful not to transmit that to them, but we have to plan out their time in the way. Know if you set out a schedule, you may not be able to keep to it, but keep certain things as non-negotiable. For me, one of the things is I know I've been snacking too much during the day. Being home, refrigerator's always there, the pantry's full. I'm lucky, I've got that. I'm snacking too much. But if I think about the fact that no, we're keeping meals to a particular time and there will be only one snack in the day. It's a way of structuring yourself, and many of the mental health practitioners are saying that the more you structure yourself now, the better you're going to feel.
Yeah.
That goes to our children. If we're calm, we can transmit that to them. And that's what we want to do. We don't need any meltdowns right now. I mean, that's just not a cool thing, especially when you're stuck in the house.
Yeah.
Speaking of this, the idea of the schedule and the structure of a schedule, you know, if I were in a place, like I'm sure many are, you know, that Paula mentioned, hypothetically, you're a single parent, you can't get food, you have to take a child with disabilities and some adversity to mask wearing. I would have a schedule in place. I would introduce the schedule a couple days in advance, like on Saturday, we're going to the store. You're going to need to wear your mask, the social story, but built into that daily schedule, when we got home, there'd be like the equivalent of almost a party. I would find every high-stake reward. And again, this can't be a thing. You can't go out every day to the grocery store, but say it's every week and a half, 2 weeks, and you know you have to do it. I would do whatever it takes and forgive myself from all those parent cliches. Like I would give chocolate cake for dinner, and we're not going to eat any vegetables for a week. You know, we're going to survive. And it's about the bigger good, the greater good for everyone, including you, the parent, your own sanity, and also the child's. You know, give the child something. If this is, the more difficult it is for the child, the greater the reward. And it's no different than everybody, even us typically developing people. You know, things that are hard for us, we do better at if we have a greater reward. And I would use that logic and put it in there so that, hey, and I would bring a copy or a sketch of the schedule with me. Look, if we do all of these things, then this happens. And it goes to just the if-then relationship conceptually is very easy for many children with disabilities to understand. If I do A, then B. Keep it super simple. But I would make, if A is hard, B has to be great, a great reward. Even if it means not serving a typical dinner, having ice cream for breakfast, whatever it takes to get through those times. Because let's face it, you're trying to avoid COVID-19, you're also trying to avoid a meltdown. You're between a rock, a hard place, and another rock. So
yeah,
I would suggest
I think that's really important. I think that that's critical for any child going through any difficult situation. And I think about something I had written a number of years ago about traveling with children, you know, especially with kids with disabilities. That can be a scary time. So that's the time, yeah, take the candy on a plane. Yeah, take the puzzles that they love the most. Take that stuffed animal with you. Maybe you're going to allow screen time for the whole flight instead of for just an hour a day. You know, you have to look at what you want to get from the child and what you're able to give back in order to do that. If you go to the supermarket and you can't get your shopping done, it isn't worth it. And if you're going to come home and have a miserable evening because of the result of a meltdown, you've got to be careful with that too. So plan it out, but planning is most important. Telling children what they can expect. Expect to see scary masks. Expect to see everyone on the street with masks. A friend of mine said, I went into the supermarket during senior shopping time and it looked like a bunch of seniors looking to rob a bank. You know, It's true though.
Yeah.
It's an odd look, so you've got to prepare kids for that, because to them it's going to be twice as odd as it is for us. We're going to sit back and laugh. They may not. They may find it very frightening.
Yeah.
And we've got to be a little bit careful about that. So I think everything comes down to preparation and finding things that kids like you were saying about superhero gloves. That's a great one. If they have mittens, though, that are really comfortable for them, or gloves that they wear in the winter that they really like, let them wear those. They don't all have to be disposable gloves. You can wash those, some of them, and do what they're most comfortable with. Um, I really do like the idea of dress up and masks. If the mask makes you feel good, you may want to use it more. If it's soft and cuddly on the inside, if you have to cut out a piece of an old blanket and sew it in or tape it in on the inside so that that's what you're feeling against your face, do it. You've got to, and it's all trial and error. I wish that we as, quote, experts could give you the perfect answer. We can't. And that should make you feel good, because you as a parent don't have the perfect answer. We as people with experience don't have the perfect answer either. It's what works with your child. You talk about masks and being scary. I'm going to tell you a funny story from many, many years ago. My sister decided she wanted to be a witch for Halloween and picked out a rather scary mask, a whole costume for it. And bought it on the night of Halloween, got all dressed up, and then turned to look in the mirror when she had the mask on, and was horrified by the witch staring her back in the mirror, had a complete and utter meltdown, and couldn't go out for Halloween.
Wow.
And it was just so frightening to her. I imagine what would have happened. She was very, very young. I mean, she was under 5. And I can imagine what would have happened if we had gone out on the street and she had seen scary masks. So in a way, it was better that she got scared at home. But we don't know how our kids are going to react sometimes. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. So the more we can prepare them, the better off things are. And don't have expectations that they're going to act a particular way. Because we don't know, really. They're all children are different, whether they have disabilities or not. And we don't know what's going to affect them one way or another. So the more we can prepare them, the better off we are for the whole idea. And any way we can engage them in the process in preparing them is better off, rather than saying, you will do this. Because they won't just do this.
Right. Yeah, no, very, very interesting. And just, jumping in, I remember last time we were talking about, Sam, you were mentioning just the concept of time. And so, if you're saying that, we're going to go out to the supermarket for half an hour, for an hour, for a few hours, might be a concept that's like, well, what does that really mean? And just, maybe having something external. I'm even thinking of, if you have a watch on or a stopwatch or something that's, stopwatch timer showing how much time, there is, so that there's like that constant reinforcement, constant reminder of this is how much time we have left, this is how much time we're doing it. Almost just like continuously providing support, just like you were saying, Sam, bringing that social story with you and having that there so you can always reflect back to it. I feel like that is a really good strategy too, just kind of supporting that, concept of how long and what we're doing and what we're doing it for.
Absolutely. And I can tell you a short anecdotal story that pertains to that. So my son, goes to a school exclusively for autistic children. And now we're in a remote environment like much of the United States. So they're trying to deliver the program as best they can, much in the same way we are with Zoom meetings and FaceTime and so forth. And Liam, my son, has some adverse reactions to that. It's like teachers' faces inside of our living room or our kitchen conceptually don't make sense. It's kind of like, if when you were growing up, perhaps if you came home and your teacher was sitting at the dinner table and they were having dinner over, you would probably not feel yourself, And I think Liam is going through a similar thing. So we decided to start small with 1 or 2 minute video chat. Just say hello, and we're building up. Now we're 5 minutes, and Liam is not unintelligent. So he said, I'd like you to, he told me, Dad, I'd like you to set your timer on your phone, which is a really good concept when it comes to time, because it's abstract for him to understand the bigger picture of the coronavirus. But he knows, look, if I only have to do this for 5 minutes and I can physically see the time coming down, it's easier for me because I have a sense of control. So that is, I think, a very effective technique. And if you know that you need to get a mask wearing out in public for 30 minutes, training with a timer might not be a bad idea, because it really helps us all, and it helps kids. Like if you have an undesirable activity, but you know there's an end in sight, it works. The hard part about the coronavirus, unlike any global or national tragedy, is that, things had an end, This doesn't seem to have an end in sight. No, there's such a grosser period of uncertainty happening here, and we're all feeling it. And it's, Paula mentioned it's really helpful not to be intentional about that and not transfer that to our kids. One of the things that I am not necessarily proud of, but I'm not ashamed of it either, and I'm happy to admit it right now, is I'll set Liam's timer for 5 minutes, knowing that it's going to take about 10 minutes. And then it goes behind the iPad, and then I hit pause. And just talk, and I go back and I hit play and I show it to him, and then I go back and I hide it and I hit pause. And so his 5 minutes is probably in real time 15 minutes. He doesn't know it. And I'm not ashamed, because sometimes, you could look at that and say it's manipulation, maybe, but the greater good is getting through the session. It's good for him. When he was a 1-year-old kid, we had to go to the doctor and get vaccinated. I told him it wouldn't hurt, and it did hurt. But the greater good was we prevented him from getting some diseases with his vaccinations. So it's similar to that concept, where I think, parents just have to know the trickery that works with their kids, and using those kinds of things in social stories and so forth. Liam has an element of OCD to his autism, and he's perseverating right now on an event that happens every summer, where he has a program that he does with his extended school year. He just perseverates on it. It's a great, great source of anxiety. So he had the knowledge and the wherewithal to ask me, hey, is the summer camp canceled this year because of the virus? And I debated it, and at first I said, well, we don't know yet, which led him to just be more uncertain, because the truth was I didn't know. And I told his teachers just yesterday, in fact, I said, I told Liam that camp was canceled. I lied to him. I don't know. It could be, it could not be. But his anxiety went completely away. Just in the knowingness that he doesn't have to worry about that. Now, if camp is reinstated, who knows what June is going to look like, July. We'll work on a transition plan then. But his concept of time is so off and is so abstract. He was worrying about something that hasn't happened yet, and it was ruining the day-to-day stuff. So I figured, you know what? It's better for him to work through these day-by-day things. And then when and if it does happen, we'll transition him then. But to be, it's 4 months out, and for him to every waking moment of the day perseverate on this, I don't know that I can last that long, and I know that he won't last that long. So the tip there is, along all the other things we've said, sometimes just manipulating the facts a little bit and using what they don't know. If he's not noticing that the timer is going on, but the behavior is sustained and is still compliant, just keep hitting pause and showing him pause and play, pause and play. It works, right? And it's for the greater good. And the same thing with these bigger concepts of time. It is really hard for disabled people, as I think it is for all of us abled people, to understand when this thing will be over. But to give people a sense of calm, or to give my Liam a sense of calm, that's what I did, and it works. So I would urge parents not to feel so guilty or bad about that kind of thing. If it works, and you'll cross the bridge if and when you need to down the road.
To piggyback on that, I'm going to go back to something that Danny, you and I spoke about in the last session I did with you, and that's praise yourself for what's working right. Don't focus on what's not working. Did you get 5 minutes of good attention? Did you get 15 minutes of good attention? Did your child begin to put on the mask and even think about it, as opposed to throwing a fit when they saw the mask? If you focus on the positive, you're going to feel better about yourself. And the bottom line is that there is no one right or wrong about how to do things, but keeping peace in your house during this time, keeping your child from being anxious, seeing progress, even if it's small progress, that's more important than beating yourself up over what didn't work. You don't really want to focus on what didn't work, because I'll tell you something. We all have things that are not working right now. We're all not keeping to certain schedules right now. We're all not getting as much done maybe as we'd like. So focus on what you did do. Did I get a half an hour of really good work in? Did I manage to work out a little bit watching a TV video? Was I relaxed today? Focus on the good part, not what didn't work.
Yeah.
And think about it, okay, next day, tomorrow will be a little better. Tomorrow we'll work a little harder. Maybe we'll get 1 more minute in there. And that's all that matters. You can't keep focusing on the negative. I really think, and I used to kind of poo-poo this a little bit, but positivity is very important right now. Focus on what's doing right. Hey, we had a great breakfast session. That worked out really well. Or everybody got dressed on time. Or everybody sat down to do their lessons. Or I got 5 minutes of solid work down with my child. Whatever it is, no matter how small, let's focus on the positive. We all need to feel better about ourselves right now. It's a way of keeping our spirits up.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I feel like that's such a common, recurring theme too, that lower expectation, where, maybe it's something that if we're just talking about it, it's like lower the expectation. Okay, sure, but how does that actually help? But, thinking about a scenario where, something didn't go according to plan, according to schedule, and then that's causing stress. And now from that point forward, we're off schedule and we're feeling stressed, and this is what I wanted to do. This is how we were planning for it, and we're off plan, and now it's just bad. Now the rest of the day, it doesn't matter. Everything starts to kind of continue from there, snowball almost down. But like you're saying, Paula, with that lowered expectation of, okay, it didn't go according to plan, but it wasn't so bad. We still had some fun. We discovered what didn't work. We got to make a mess and touch a lot of different textures in the kitchen, and that was fun, and we had fun. Okay, kind of laugh about it, and we know for next time this doesn't work, then boom, now okay, maybe that didn't work, but the next activity, the next step, we're kind of at like a neutral, at least, place to start it. So positivity, yeah.
And let's, even with the positivity, let's go on to something that I think is important. Looking at the everyday learning that can occur. You may get a syllabus from your child's school, whether your child is able or not. You may get a syllabus for your child's school. But if the child isn't willing to sit down, let's go in the kitchen and cook. When you're cooking, you've got measuring, that's math. You've got textures, that's helping you in some way. You've got a timer looking at how to do things. It's following rules step by step. So you may have had a great time making chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen, and it wasn't today's lesson, but there's a lot to be learned in following a recipe for cooking and doing something together that makes everybody smile. So I think, looking at the everyday tasks and thinking about what's wonderful about them and how they can be meaningful within the time. It's not the perfect school lesson, but it has lots of educational components in it.
Yeah. And there was another question that we had about movement, and just that, throughout the day, maybe once we were, when we weren't all kind of constrained, so to say, to the home, we were able to move around more. There was more chance to get that energy out. And where now, kind of what do we do with that extra energy? And just kind of as a way to introduce the question too, I think that's a really interesting thing what you're saying, Paula, is that, kind of finding education in, what we might consider like non-educational ways that still have like educational opportunities in them and possibilities. And even just for a movement, moving by carrying something heavy throughout the kitchen and holding something heavy, is a good way to use that energy. And, helping out by opening and closing a heavy refrigerator door, even something like that.
Sam, you had a wonderful idea when we spoke about this. You had a list of different online things that parents could use, and they were eye-openers for me. I think that parents would love to hear a whole pile of them.
Absolutely, and they're widely available. Many, I think, at least the elementary teachers that I'm in touch with that are doing virtual learning are using them at home, because essentially it's kind of like the perpetual indoor recess. Nobody's going out anymore. There's no playgrounds. A lot of parks are closed. Sports are certainly not working. So there's a lot of online programs and apps. Go Noodle is probably one of the more popular ones at the elementary level. GONOODLE, Go Noodle. And they can get on there. There's a cartoon character, and they basically, there's a lot of high-pitched music. It's fun and very interactive, where they emulate what's on screen. That's easy to do through home. There's a variety of other ones that, again, depending on the needs, Disney has some things out, I believe, as does one that's called Move, Move, Move. There's a lot of them out there. I don't know a lot of the trade ones offline, but Go Noodle is one that we used at my former place of employment when I was an elementary principal in another life, and that we did that Go Noodle thing, and that was great. So there's a lot of programs and things out there that are available if you just type in movement at home. Very easy to do and just emulate. Kind of like, there was one, I don't know if they have an at-home application, but it was called Dance Dance Revolution. If you've ever been to an arcade, you would see like light up squares. Well, there was ways that you can do that through a big screen. And we, on days where we couldn't get kids outdoors for weather related purposes usually, that was one of the things we did, and the kids are learning dance moves and that kind of thing. Another thing, if you have access to it, and my knowledge about video gaming and that kind of stuff is certainly not up to speed. But Wii, for example, the Wii gaming system had tennis and different kinds of activities that you could do that you were up and not sitting and moving around. So all those kinds of things are good for movement. They really, truly are.
Yeah, and also just, a previous video that Paula and I did, Paula, you were talking a lot about with that schedule, like maybe this is a good time for, using the screen while, a parent might have to get certain things done. And then just kind of, using those movement breaks and times of, okay, now's a good time to do an activity, because I need to do something as a parent. Just kind of like understanding that schedule and what the best time to do things would be.
Sometimes you want screen time. Sometimes you want movement time. Even if you're racing around the living room a bit, or if you have a hallway, throwing a Nerf ball or a very soft ball so it won't damage anything down a hallway, and having somebody at the other end catch it, playing catch, playing monkey in the middle if you can. Again, softball so you're not damaging things. But you want to get up and move, in, even if it's jumping jacks. I used to always do with my son when he was younger to increase muscle tone. When we were walking down the sidewalk, the natural lines that are in the sidewalk, I'd say, okay, every time you get to one, you have to jump over it. So jump over the cracks. Don't step on the cracks and jump over the big cracks, because that jumping gives you something. So if you are going outside and you are on the street, and I'm not talking about like in the supermarket, but I'm talking about out on the street, doing things, or jumping up and down the curb if you're not in a place where it's dangerous, just to give yourself that active movement. It just keeps the body going. And taking movement breaks allows for you to come back and sit down and have greater concentration.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually just this morning read a study that I can't remember exactly where I found it from, but it was just very interesting because it was talking about just actual data supporting how not only taking breaks throughout the day, but movement right before test taking, students would have increased scores. So, there was, I guess, higher attention, higher focus. So, like one student would take a test and then, at another point, take that same test, but with movement, or a similar test, like different questions, but same concepts, but just with movement right before. And they were scoring, significantly higher after moving.
There have been a number of studies that show that active movement increases attention span. Now, for some of our kids who are hyperactive, if they do active movement, it's hard to get them to calm down. So you need a quiet transition session before you get them to calm down. So you can't just be running around the house and then say, okay, now sit. You say, okay, we're going to do some quiet activities. Now maybe we're going to do yoga. Maybe we're going to just stretch here. Maybe we're going to do that. And then we're going to do our activity. So movement does increase attention span.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm noticing in my own home with, not just my autistic son, but my other typically developing children, and even myself and my wife, is, with this quarantine, I think motivation is a struggle for lots of people. You just become unmotivated in different times, and structure, as Paul was saying earlier in this conversation, can help with that mental kind of, in the rut, if you will, and you just feel, there's days where you just don't feel motivated to do anything, you're just, yeah. So I think that can be a challenge, and it can be an increased challenge for those with disabilities. One of the things that we've done, and again, it's just a way of, I don't have a better term other than a little bit of friendly, well-intentioned manipulation. Liam loves animals. And we play animal charades where you draw a card, all created by Liam, and you have to act like that animal. When it's Liam's turn and he has to act like an animal, if it's penguin and he's waddling like a penguin, which, by the way, he does a near perfect Oscar award caliber performance of waddling like a penguin. The secret that I have with his brothers and sisters is never guess penguin the first guess. Has to go deep. Guess about 8 other animals, because the longer we can get him to waddle back and forth in the living room, at least maybe there's a chance of getting his heart rate up. It's the only activity sometimes we get him to do in a week, but let him waddle for a little while. And it's fun to watch. He certainly enjoys it. Well, we know he's acting like a penguin because the cards in this game haven't changed in years. So he's Drew Penguin. This is Liam's penguin. We all know what it looks like, but you get the point. Like, oh, you're a dog. And Liam will shake us off. No, I'm not a dog. How about a monkey? No. And he'll waddle even more. So if you can do those kinds of things where there's enjoyment happening, but it's just a way to stretch it out a little bit, I think it's a good thing to do. And that comes with time in the game as a parent. That comes with just, again, the trial and error things. But you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be so quick to pull the next hand, the next card, just have fun with it and do what works, And, so Liam hasn't caught on because he doesn't really have that social knowledge that people are, quote unquote, messing with him. He hasn't caught on that there's another scenario happening where we're just purposely guessing the incorrect answer. So we take advantage of that, and it works for Liam's good. So I would say, anytime you can do stuff like that, I think it's beneficial.
It is. And Sam keeps calling it manipulation. And manipulation has a negative context
Sure
to
it
it.
does.
And yes, we are manipulating, but are we manipulating when we do behavioral things, you know, like giving a reward for somebody doing something right? That's also a manipulation.
Yep.
I prefer to think of it as enhancing something positive. We're getting, for Liam, we're getting active movement in there.
Yep.
And everybody's having a little bit of fun with it at the same time. I've played charades with Sam's family, and I have to tell you that Liam is pretty amazing at charades in general. He acts out things better than most people do. But think about what your goal is. Is your goal to have fun? Well, everybody's having fun. Is your
Yep.
goal to get him to move? Yeah, he's moving around. Everybody's moving around a little bit. Instead of thinking about it just as a manipulation, you know, again, try to put a positive spin on all of these things, because I think that that's important. Right now, one of the things that I'm seeing going on that I think is very important is family game night.
Mm.
For a long time, that was gone. But right now, people are getting together as a family, and I think that they're interacting on a different level than when everybody had dinner and everybody went off to do their own thing. I know my nieces and nephews are all sitting with their kids having different game nights, and very often they're introducing them to old games, you know, Monopoly, Sorry, Trouble, things like that, that are just simple games, but that everybody's sitting down and doing. We moved not too long ago, and we got rid of a whole lot of games. I am so sorry about that right now. And my husband said the other night, you think we could buy some puzzles? I haven't done a puzzle in years, but I think that would be fun right now. But it's also a way of getting people to engage. And I think that let's look at a little bit of the positive side of this whole awful experience of the coronavirus. But if we can get families to interact a little bit more, do some things together, have some fun together, you know, I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's another type of expectation that
Yeah.
I think we can have and do a little bit differently. That basically it's a matter of, you know, just getting together and interacting and doing fun. I realized we don't even have a deck of cards in our house here right now. So, you know, think about different things that can bring about enjoyment in the situation. And it can be, you know, as simple, like I said, as cooking, or as complicated as making up a game or playing a game. And I think that, again, if you can get more movement in children because of it, charades is a great one. You know, think about different sports. How would you act out football as opposed to baseball or soccer or something like that? And make those your charades cards and have the kids try to act them out, and you guess what they are.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that just
On that note of positivity, you know, to the parents listening in, I want to offer this. You know, as a former elementary school principal, when we would have parent-teacher conferences, one of the most common things I heard as parents were exiting the school, you know, as they said, you know, the teacher told me my kid is really well behaved and polite, and I asked them, are we sure we have the right child here? Is this my child you're talking about? And, you know, kids behave differently in school than they do at home. And I say that simply because sometimes it's not all schools' responsibility, it's not all schools' credit that the kids are as good as they are. It comes from home. My point, though, is that parents are in this time probably don't realize they're doing as good as they are. You know, I think they might think that I didn't get this to work, or, you know, they're not seeing the positive in the little things. Remember, these are the same kids that you were surprised were polite in school if you got news like that. And a lot of the times they do. They can't believe their kids do the things they do in school. So I would want to remind parents that it's often much later. It's a very delayed gratification, this thing called parenting. We don't see immediate progress ever. It takes time, and then you go to your back to school or your parent-teacher conference, and you hear that your kid is a gentleman or a lady, and they're really doing wonderful things, and they have friends, and you're like, do we have the same kid that we're talking about here? So there's a sense of that's really true. Meanwhile, these kids come home every day from school, and you say, what did you learn? And the most common answer is nothing. So you can't always go by what kids are showing us or what they're doing. Sometimes you just have to put it in the perspective that, as you said, end on a positive, see the positive in everything, that you're probably doing much better at this than you think. Even if you are getting behaviors and things like that, you're probably doing better than you think. And everything's going to be okay in the end. It really will.
Yeah. And I think that's, really powerful. And, I really like just a lot of everything that you were both saying. So many different strategies from, rewards and just how to make masks feel more comfortable, how to make our children feel more comfortable, a lot of different strategies, different ways to prepare, different ways to plan, different ways to move, different things to do. And I really like the family dynamic. And Paula, something you said in our last video was really powerful that reminded me I just wanted to mention also was that, sometimes we're so focused on what's happening now, but if we kind of just lower those expectations, find some, positive to focus on, that we might end up with a lot of really meaningful memories of, maybe the whole family playing together, where older siblings and younger siblings that don't usually interact are on a team together and just doing fun things, whether it's games or charades, just doing things fun and just kind of, it is very positive. This whole conversation is very positive. And I also hope that it is helping and helpful for everyone watching in. And maybe we can just wrap up with, are there any final, tips, strategies, final words of advice that you would want to leave for parents of, what parents might need to know, or just something that you would want to say? Sam, I know you were saying now just that, to kind of remember that you're not doing as bad as you might be. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, or Paula, anything you can think of, maybe as a nice way to conclude. Put you both on the spot.
Okay. Go, Sam.
Well, just to echo that sentiment that you're probably doing better than you think, and that these are unprecedented times. So it's really challenging to really measure anybody's success during these times. I think it's just, if you can take it in a day-by-day thing, and not really, concern yourself with the overall or big picture, just kind of small little goals day by day, be reflective, give yourself a break, those kinds of things, I think will get us by. I would say to, particularly to the parents of autistic kids, the support groups that I'm a part of online, there are people that are quote unquote white knuckling their way through this. They're getting behaviors and things like that, and they really don't know how to grasp or get a sense of control. To those people, I would say, before it's too late, reach out and connect with other people. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not directly for your child, but it's for yourself. Connect with another parent who understands what it is you're going through. Sometimes just having a reset with yourself as the parent is all that it really takes. You're not going to solve those problems necessarily, or all the problems with your child, but having a sense that you're not alone, and that you can connect with somebody who's in the same boat and use them as a support, I think is very meaningful to the success. In fact, I think it's sometimes even more meaningful than any direct plan with the child.
Yeah.
I'm going to piggyback right on what Sam says. I've been a therapist for over 35 years, and every time I talk to the educators I've worked with, to Sam, to parents of the children I've worked with, I learned something different. So sharing really helps you, gives you different ideas, different things to think about. We may be coming from different perspectives. We may have different kinds of kids with different kinds of issues, but if you're open to it, you can get a ton of different ideas from talking with other people. And to follow up on the positivity, before you go to bed at night, find 3 things that worked well that day, even if they're the tiniest things, and don't repeat them every day. It can't be the same thing. You'll begin to start thinking more positively about what's going on. And I think that that's the mental health piece of it. You know, we're all trying to do the best for our kids, but at the same time, we have to do the best for our mental health as well. So every night, think about 3 things that went well during the day, even if it only lasted for a few minutes. I think it'll have you begin to turn your headset around a little bit. So those are the 2 things I would want to leave parents with and therapists.
Yeah.
And I would piggyback onto that, the piggybacking theme here, by just simply adding that, if you're at a home and you're, trying to educate and raise a child with disabilities, you need to take some time. Maybe at the end of the day is the best time when the child goes to sleep. Think about what went well and what didn't went well, and then you need to think about things that have nothing to do with your child. That nothing to do with the disability, nothing to do with this current state. You need to create space where you get to think about things that are important just to you. Not that your child's not important, but for your own sense of serenity, for your own well-being, for your own health, you need to kind of look forward to things on your own. And it might not, because let's face it, you're saturated. Work and school have become one under one roof. People are living in really saturated, intense times. And so I don't think you get off duty, hang up your apron, and go straight to bed to get rest. I think you find, even if you're exhausted, take 10 minutes and just do something for you that has nothing to do with your child. It's okay that you don't think about your child for a couple minutes every day. It really is. In fact, I think it's healthy.
Great point.
I would encourage people to do that too.
Yeah, and as Paula said, that as
Great point.
as a person takes care of themselves, that's kind of the energy that's transmuted too. It's not that stressful energy that someone might be feeling. It's the positive energy that there are strategies to create within yourselves. Yeah, and getting that support. And I actually did a really interesting video. Sorry, I'll just end with that. Also, I did an interesting video with a counselor who has been specializing in trauma and working with mothers with trauma for many years also. So she says that, sometimes a parent might think, I don't have time throughout the day to do 30-minute meditation or yoga or exercise. So therefore, no strategies would work. But, Sam, just like you're saying, where you spend a couple of minutes at the end of the day thinking about for yourself, or Paula, how you're saying just, it's almost like a gratitude journal, even if it's mental one, of just kind of getting that out on paper. And another good strategy that this counselor was recommending was at a time of stress, you could just squeeze your hands and tighten everything up, tighten up all your muscles and let go. And, squeeze and let go. And something that might take just a couple of seconds in the moment is a good kind of strategy to let go. And there are, support groups and strategies out there to find in the moment, strategies that are able to help de-escalate our own stresses. And, really the highest kind of the highest health that we can achieve for ourselves is, going to be the healthiest for those around us. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
So, wow, awesome. Well, that was, so powerful and beautiful. And again, hope it's been helpful for everyone watching at home. And just Paula and Sam, I just want to give you a round of applause and thank you for
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking us to be involved in this.
Likewise, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your experience and your knowledge. Everyone at home, hope this has been helpful. Feel free to reach out with any questions or comments. Let us know if there's anything else. Maybe if you have any questions, I can always reach out, to Paula and Sam and see if we can, brainstorm and see if we can find anything else that might be helpful. So everyone, be well, take care, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.